It was 11:42 p.m. when Darren Lockwood finally stepped out of the office. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like angry insects as he walked through the empty parking lot, clutching his briefcase and coffee-stained coat. Another late night, another missed dinner. His tired eyes scanned the quiet streets of Pine Hollow, a rural town in Oregon, known more for logging roads than reliable Wi-Fi. Darren usually took the interstate home, but tonight a detour sign blocked his exit. Road closed. Use alternate route, it read. Sighing, he pulled out his phone for GPS. The app suggested Forest Route 17, a winding back road through thick woods, rarely used since the 1980s. It's just one night, he muttered, turning the wheel. As his car slipped deeper into the trees, the radio began to crackle with static. He tapped the screen, no signal. The deeper he went, the denser the fog became, rising from the ground like silent ghosts. The road narrowed to barely a lane, the forest on either side pressing in. Trees towered above like ancient sentinels, their branches clawing at the night sky. Then something strange. His headlights caught a figure just beyond the roadside brush. A woman in white, barefoot, her back to him. Darren slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt, tires skidding on damp leaves. He stared, frozen, heart hammering. But when he looked again, she was gone. Just mist and trees. Must be exhausted, he whispered, laughing nervously. He tried to drive on, but the engine sputtered, then died. Silence. No lights, no hum, no wind. Darren cursed, banging the steering wheel. He grabbed his phone, still no service. He tried restarting the car. Nothing. And then he heard it. A soft tapping on the rear window. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, rhythmic, measured. He spun around. Nothing was there. The glass was fogged from the inside, his own breath condensing in the cold air. Tap, tap, tap. This time from the side window, he peered out. Still nothing. He tried the ignition again. The dashboard lights flickered, then blacked out. Every sound seemed amplified his breath, the wind in the trees, the rustling of something. Walking. He stepped out of the car, flashlight in hand. "Hello," he called. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just darkness. Then a whisper. Not in his ear, but in his mind. Clear, cold, inhuman. "You've entered the woods that never let go." Darren staggered back toward the car, but it was gone. Not broken down, not missing. Gone, as if it had never existed. Only a trail now lay ahead of him, winding deeper into the forest. And behind him, the trees were closing in. Darren's breath came in short, panicked bursts. The spot where his car had stalled was now nothing more than mossy earth, as if no vehicle had ever touched it. No tire tracks, no spilled coffee, just pine needles, cold air, and silence pressing against his chest like a weight. He turned in a slow circle. "This isn't happening," he whispered. But it was. The path ahead, narrow and barely visible, seemed to pulse faintly under the moonlight, as if the forest itself was urging him forward. Behind him, the trees had knitted together into a solid wall of bark and shadow. He had no choice. With flashlight in hand, he began walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, his shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth. The deeper he went, the more unnatural everything became. Trees bent at impossible angles. Roots writhed like sleeping serpents beneath the ground. The air smelled wrong, not of nature, but of rot, of old things left too long in the dark. Then the whispering began again. Not from one voice, but many. Male, female, children, old, some loud and desperate, others so faint they were almost swallowed by the wind. "Turn back! It's too late! You shouldn't be here!" Darren clutched his head. "Stop!" he shouted, but the forest swallowed his voice like it was never there. He walked faster, then broke into a jog. Branches clawed at his coat. A vine snatched his ankle, sending him crashing to the ground. Dirt filled his mouth. As he pushed himself up, he saw something carved into the trunk of a nearby tree. A name. Darren Lockwood. Freshly etched. still wet. He stumbled back in horror. No, 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 he gasped. Then he saw more names. One tree, two, dozens, hundreds, all carved into the bark like a memorial. Some names had dates, some didn't, and one had a blood-red smear slashed across it. He turned and ran blindly, not caring where he was going, only that he was getting away. But the deeper he ran, the more the forest seemed to twist. The path turned back on itself. A mossy boulder appeared again and again, even though he swore he was going straight. It was a loop, a trap. Finally exhausted, Darren stopped beneath a dead tree and dropped to his knees. His flashlight flickered, then died. Darkness enveloped him, and from that blackness came footsteps. Not from in front of him, not behind, but all around. The footsteps encircled Darren like a ritual, slow, deliberate, and closing in. He held his breath. Crunch. Crunch. The sound of leaves being crushed underfoot echoed in every direction. He spun, flashlight dead in his hand, eyes wide and straining in the black. The moon had vanished behind a thick veil of clouds. Even the stars refused to shine here. "Who's there?" Darren shouted. No reply, just breathing. Low, raspy, not entirely human. Then a light, not from the sky, not from his flashlight, but ahead on the path. Dim, flickering, like a lantern being carried through the mist. Hope surged through Darren's chest. He ran toward it. "Hey, I need help," he cried. But the figure holding the lantern never responded. It moved deeper into the fog, floating rather than walking. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing him in. "Please, wait!" He chased it down the winding path, roots and thorns tearing at his legs, until suddenly the figure stopped. Darren skidded to a halt. Just ahead stood an old man in a gray coat. His face was hidden by the brim of his hat, the lantern swaying in his hand. For a moment, everything was still. "Sir?" Darren asked, cautiously stepping closer. "I'm lost. My car broke down and—" The man slowly raised his head. But where eyes should have been, there were only empty sockets. Black holes. Endless. The mouth opened, but no words came out, only a deep, bone-chilling groan, as though 1,000 voices were trapped inside, begging to be let free. The lantern burst into blue flame. Darren screamed and stumbled backward, but when he blinked, the man was gone. So was the fog. The forest had changed again. Now he stood before a small wooden cabin with a crooked roof, hidden between twisted trees. Smoke rose from the chimney. A faint yellow light glowed behind dusty windows. It looked abandoned, but lived in. He hesitated. Then the door creaked open slowly, painfully, revealing only shadow inside. And a voice, soft and sweet, like a child. "Come in, Darren. It's warmer inside." His blood froze. No one should know his name. Darren stared at the open doorway, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the whispering trees behind him. The voice that had called his name, soft, childlike, inviting, still echoed in his skull. "Come in, Darren." It shouldn't have known who he was. No one out here should. But the cold was biting now. His coat was torn from the thorns, and his hands trembled, half from fear, half from the creeping chill. The forest had played tricks on him all night, but a cabin meant shelter. Shelter meant survival. He stepped forward. The wooden porch groaned under his weight. Inside, the glow came from a single oil lamp sitting on a warped table. The room was small and musty, filled with the scent of old wood and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. There was no one inside. "Hello," Darren called out, his voice shaky. "Is anyone here?" Silence. He hesitated, then shut the door behind him. It clicked closed a little too smoothly, like it had been waiting for him. The fireplace was cold, but recently used ashes still smoldered faintly. An old rocking chair faced the hearth. Books lined a crooked shelf along the far wall, all with rotted spines and no visible titles. On the table next to the lamp, he saw a photograph in a cracked frame. He picked it up. It was a black and white picture of a man, a woman, and a child standing in front of this very cabin. The photo was stained and wrinkled, but something about the child's face, his breath caught. It was him. The child looked exactly like Darren had at 6 years old, same hair, same smile, even the same chipped tooth. He dropped the photo. It hit the floor with a sound like glass shattering, though the frame hadn't broken. Then he heard footsteps, not outside this time, but from upstairs. Creak, creak. He hadn't noticed the staircase before. "Hello," he called again, more desperate now. No answer. Just the slow, heavy tread of something descending. Step by step. He backed toward the door, but when he reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. The knob turned freely, but the door wouldn't open. It was sealed shut, as though the wood had grown into the frame. Behind him, the footsteps stopped. At the base of the stairs, he turned slowly. There was no one there, but a shadow moved along the wall, tall, thin, wrong. And then that voice returned, no longer childlike. It was deeper now, layered with tones like many mouths speaking at once. "You've been here before, Darren. Don't you remember?" Darren's skin crawled. The voice that spoke his name didn't just say it, it wore it, curling around each syllable like it owned him. The shadow on the wall pulsed as if alive, stretching up the staircase and vanishing into the floor above. The silence that followed was worse than the voice, a silence that expected him. "You've been here before." The words wouldn't leave his head. His memory screamed that it was impossible. He had never been to these woods, never seen this cabin. And yet, something deep in his bones trembled like an old lock trying to remember how to open. The air grew colder. The oil lamp dimmed, flickering as if suffocating. He backed away from the stairs, then froze. A soft thump. From upstairs, then another. Like something being dropped, or dragged. Against his better judgment, Darren crept toward the staircase. Each step he took creaked with age and warning. The wood was warped, the banister carved with strange symbols he didn't recognize, circles inside triangles, lines that bent unnaturally, runes that shifted when he blinked. He reached the top. A narrow hallway stretched ahead, the walls lined with faded wallpaper peeling in long curling strips. There were 3 doors all closed, but one of them had a light beneath it, a faint amber glow pulsing like a heartbeat. He approached. As he laid his hand on the doorknob, a memory he didn't know he had came crashing into him. A boy, crying, locked in a dark room, scratching at the walls, screaming for someone who never came. His hand recoiled from the knob as if burned. He backed away, and the door opened on its own. Slowly, creaking wide enough for him to see inside. The room was small, bare. The only piece of furniture was a wooden crib, old and broken, its paint chipped, its slats bent. In the crib sat a stuffed bear with one missing eye and a red ribbon around its neck. And on the far wall, written in what looked like dried blood, "Welcome home, Darren." He stumbled back. No, this isn't mine. This isn't my life." Then came the sound of a lullaby warbled, off-key, echoing from nowhere. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word." The bear turned its head. Its single eye locked onto Darren. Then the room exploded in a scream, a shrill, piercing, infantile wail that shattered the lamp down below, extinguishing all light. Darkness swallowed everything. In the black, the voice returned now, right behind him. Time to remember, Darren. Time to wake up." Darren spun toward the voice, but saw only darkness, thick and absolute. No walls, no floor, no ceiling. Even the hallway seemed to dissolve around him. It felt like he was floating, trapped in a void where time didn't move and breath was borrowed. Then faintly a soft hum returned. The lullaby. And if that mockingbird don't sing, the melody twisted now, no longer a song, a chant. Words forgotten by time, whispered backward, and then light. A thin strip at the end of the hall, just a sliver, like a door slightly ajar. Darren's instincts screamed to run the other way, but his feet moved toward it. Something compelled him. Not fear, not courage, something deeper, familiar. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside was a room completely unlike the rest of the cabin. Clean, dustless. The walls were white, smooth. The air smelled of antiseptic. A hospital? But there was no furniture, no bed, no machines. Only one thing stood in the center, a tall antique mirror, its silver frame etched with curling ivy patterns and symbols identical to the ones carved into the stair banister. The mirror's glass shimmered, cloudy as though fogged from inside. Darren stepped closer. His reflection stared back, but wrong. The him in the mirror was pale, with sunken eyes and lips that didn't quite move right. It smiled. A slow, stretched, unnatural smile. Darren took a step back, heart hammering. The reflection didn't mimic him. It reached forward, pressing its hand to the glass, and Darren felt the chill on his own palm, as if his hand had touched ice. Then the reflection whispered, "You left us." Darren shook his head. "I didn't. I don't know what this place is." The glass rippled like water. Images swirled: a forest fire, a child screaming behind a locked door, a man in a suit walking away from a hospital bed with no expression. Each flash struck him like a blow to the chest. Visions too real to be imagined. Too personal. Then a final image. A younger Darren, maybe 15, running through the woods. A boy behind him, smaller, crying. "Wait for me, Darren." But Darren kept running. Left the boy behind, and silence followed. The mirror cracked. A thin line shot through the center, and the air thickened, pressing in like walls were collapsing. The reflection grinned wider, its jaw beginning to unhinge, and behind it, other faces appeared in the mirror, pale, sunken, watching, waiting. The lights flickered. Then the mirror exploded. Glass shards floated in the air like they were underwater, unmoving, suspended. But each piece reflected something different, different memories, different guilt. And in the center of the swirling glass, a voice like thunder whispered, "You cannot leave until you remember who you buried here." Darren stumbled back as the shards of the mirror hovered in the air, each one glowing faintly. The faces trapped in their reflections moved mouths, silently screaming, eyes wide with grief. He turned to run, but the door had vanished. The room was sealed now, transformed into a cube of white walls and floating glass memories. A low hum began again, not the lullaby this time, but a deep throbbing vibration, like the earth groaning beneath the surface. From one of the hovering shards, Darren saw a new memory forming. He stepped closer. In the reflection, a boy's body lay curled on the forest floor. Cold, still, his clothes tattered, one shoe missing. It was the boy from the vision in the mirror, the one who had called out, "Wait for me, Darren." The image zoomed out to show Darren younger, panicked, eyes wild, looking down at the body, crying, trembling, digging with his bare hands in the dirt and leaves, covering the boy quickly, desperately. He whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you." Darren fell to his knees. No, that's not real." But it was. The more he watched, the more he remembered. His younger brother Eli. The family camping trip. The argument. The game of hide-and-seek that turned into a nightmare when Darren grew angry and stormed away, leaving Eli behind in the woods, where something else had found him first. He had found Eli's body the next morning. Lifeless. Cold. And in his terror and shame, he had buried him beneath the twisted tree, the very tree Darren had passed hours ago. He had never told anyone, never spoken Eli's name again. He had buried the memory as deep as the body. The mirror shards clattered to the floor, the walls dissolved. Darren was in the woods again. Only now the trees were closer, twisted, crooked, and watching. In front of him, the twisted tree stood tall and rotting, bark split like open wounds. At its base, the earth shifted. Something beneath the soil breathed. Then a small voice, soft and brittle like dried leaves. "You left me here, Darren?" The ground cracked. A pale hand emerged, fingers small and broken. Then another. And then a face. Not rotting, not monstrous. Just sad. Just Eli. Eyes full of betrayal and longing. "You said you'd be right back." Darren fell to his knees, sobbing. "I was scared. I was just a kid." Eli's face contorted, not with rage but sorrow. "You forgot me." "I didn't," Darren cried. "I buried it because it hurt too much." The wind howled. The forest screamed. The forest remembers, and it doesn't forgive. Roots slithered from the ground, wrapping around Darren's legs. The tree split open with a sound like tearing flesh, revealing a hollow trunk filled with faces, all children, all lost, all forgotten. And Darren realized with a sinking, unbearable certainty, this forest had claimed more than just Eli. It was fed by guilt, and he had been walking its paths his whole life. Darren screamed as the roots tightened around his ankles, dragging him toward the yawning hollow of the tree. Eli's face remained above the soil, unmoving, eyes following his every motion with quiet devastation. The other faces in the trunk, children of every age and era, shifted slightly, their mouths silently forming words Darren couldn't hear. "Oh, or didn't want to. No, I didn't mean to forget," he shouted, clawing at the earth. "I didn't mean to leave him." But the forest wasn't listening. It never listened. It judged. As he was pulled into the hollow, he was hit by a wave of cold so sharp it felt like knives under his skin. Inside the tree, time didn't seem to move. The walls pulsed with sap that looked like blood. The smell was thick, wet soil, rot, and burnt plastic. Then a bell rang, sharp, metallic, echoing strangely within the wooden prison. The tree shook. The roots around Darren loosened slightly like startled serpents. Another bell, closer this time. And then, a flashlight beam. It cut through the black like a sword, blinding and warm. "Over here," a voice shouted. It wasn't a ghost. It was real. Darren shielded his eyes. The roots slithered away, hissing. The children in the tree trunk wailed silently, as if mourning the light's presence. Then a figure appeared at the hollow's entrance, a man in a bright orange jacket with a searchlight and a walkie-talkie crackling on his shoulder. "Jesus, we've been looking for you for hours. You okay?" the man asked, reaching out a gloved hand. Darren blinked, his vision swimming. I don't know. Come on, we need to get you out of here before night falls again." The rescuer helped Darren out of the hollow and back into the forest. But something was wrong. The trees looked different. They weren't looming. They were dead, charred, as if a fire had swept through recently. The air was no longer cold, but dry and lifeless. "Where am I?" Darren asked. The man gave him a strange look. "You're in Whispering Woods National Forest. At least, what's left of it. Big fire tore through last year. We only reopened some trails last month. You weren't supposed to be here. But I was in a living forest, with shadows and voices and—" "Yeah," the man interrupted quietly. "People say this place messes with your head. Survivors always talk about weird sounds, getting lost even with a map, seeing people that aren't there." He hesitated. "One guy swore he saw his dead brother." Darren stopped walking. "What did you say?" The man shrugged. "Happens more than you'd think. This forest has a way of digging up what you bury." Darren looked back. The tree hollow was gone. No roots, no faces, just blackened bark. But the guilt, that remained. He whispered, "I remember now." The wind stirred, dry leaves fluttering. And somewhere deep in the ash, a child's voice echoed faintly, "Good." Darren followed the rescue worker in silence, his limbs aching with each step. The forest looked like a graveyard, trees scorched black, underbrush reduced to ash. No animals. No wind. Just the dry, lifeless crunch of his boots against the earth. The man introduced himself as Lucas, a park ranger stationed at the edge of Whispering Woods. "We spotted your car outside the trail loop," he said, not looking back. "Locked, empty. You weren't listed on any hiking permit, which was already a red flag, but your footprints led into a closed section." "I wasn't hiking," Darren muttered. "I was just trying to get home." Lucas paused. "At midnight, through a federal forest with no lights?" Darren didn't answer. Because he didn't have one. Something had drawn him off the road, something he still couldn't name. They reached a ranger outpost, a small wooden shack with solar panels and a crackling radio inside. Lucas handed Darren a foil blanket and a thermos of hot water. "We'll call in a report and get you checked by a medic. Might be some mild exposure." Darren nodded and looked around the cabin and froze. The interior, the wooden walls, the layout, even the faint scent of mold. It was exactly like the cabin he'd seen in the woods earlier. The one with the lullaby. The one with the mirror. But this place was different now. Clean, sterile, empty. He swallowed hard. "Have you always had the station here?" Lucas looked up from the radio. "What? Yeah, this post's been here since the 80s. Refitted after the fire." "Why?" "No reason," Darren lied. Because he remembered the exact carvings in the banister. The same creaky floorboard by the door. The place hadn't just looked like the cabin, it was the cabin. But twisted, haunted. Or maybe remembered differently. Later that night, after the medic had cleared him and Lucas offered him a cot to rest on, Darren couldn't sleep. He sat on the wooden porch, staring into the dead trees. Then he heard it again. The lullaby. Soft, distant, but real. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word." He stood and scanned the woods. There was nothing. But when he looked down, he saw something beneath the porch steps. A child's shoe. Old, dirty, too small for anyone here. He picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, a name was written in fading ink. E. Myers, his brother's name. The forest hadn't let go. It had followed him. Darren couldn't move. The small, dirt-covered shoe felt like it weighed 100 pounds in his hand. The faded letters, E. Myers, burned into his vision. He stumbled back into the ranger cabin, heart pounding, sweat beading on his skin, despite the night chill. Lucas looked up from the radio. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Darren didn't answer. He just held out the shoe. Lucas frowned. "Where did you find that?" "Under the porch," Darren whispered. The ranger took the shoe carefully, studying it with furrowed brows. "No one's been here in weeks. We swept the area after the fire. This wasn't here." Darren stepped back. "He's still here. My brother. The forest hasn't let him go." Lucas hesitated. Then he reached under the desk and pulled out an old binder. Worn, dusty, the edges curled from age. "What's that?" "Missing persons reports," Lucas said quietly. "Just from this forest." He flipped through the pages, one after another. Faces of children, teenagers, hikers, hunters, dozens of them. "They always vanish the same way," he said. "No struggle, no trace, like the woods just swallows them." Darren scanned the pages. Some looked recent, others were old, yellowed with time. And then he froze. A photo of a young boy, smiling, gap-toothed. Eli Myers. "Why is this here?" Darren whispered. "We never filed a report. We buried him. Two buried him." Lucas looked at him, face pale. That photo was logged in 1987, found pinned to a tree deep in Sector 9. Same name, same face. "That's not possible." But it was. The picture was too perfect. It hadn't aged a day. The radio crackled to life suddenly, loud, violent static erupting from the speakers. Lucas jumped. Then, beneath the static, a whisper. "Darren!" Both men stared at the radio. The voice came again, clearer this time. "You left me." Darren grabbed the radio. Eli, is that you? The static screamed, then cut off sharply. Dead silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. Oh, 3 slow knocks at the cabin door. Lucas stood up, flashlight in hand. It's probably another ranger. But Darren knew better. The knocks came again. Knock, knock, knock. Lucas opened the door. No one was there. Just the woods. And a trail of small, muddy footprints leading away from the porch, deeper into the trees. Darren grabbed his coat in the photo. I have to follow him. Lucas stepped in front of him. You're exhausted. We wait until morning. But Darren's eyes were fixed on the trees, on the trail that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. I left him once, he whispered. I'm not doing it again. And with that, he stepped off the porch and into the dark, following the trail only he could see. The trail led Darren deeper into the dead woods, where the trees twisted like gnarled hands reaching for the sky. The moon cast thin, silver beams, barely lighting the path ahead. His breath came out in ragged puffs, the cold air biting at his lungs, but he pushed on. Every step felt heavier, as if the forest itself resisted his passage. The small footprints paused by an ancient stone circle, covered in moss and cracked with age. Darren knelt, touching the cold surface. Symbols, strange runes, were carved deep into the stones. He felt a pulse beneath his fingertips, like a heartbeat. A whisper drifted through the trees. Return what was taken. Darren's mind raced. What had been taken? Eli, his peace, his innocence. Suddenly, a figure appeared between the stones, a shadow at first, then more solid. Eli's pale face, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Why did you leave me? The apparition asked, voice echoing like the wind. I was scared, Darren said, tears blurring his vision. I didn't know what to do. The ghostly boy stepped forward, reaching out a cold hand. Help me rest, Darren nodded. I will. The forest sighed, the runes glowing softly as the night deepened. The forest wasn't just a prison, it was a guardian, demanding truth and forgiveness. And Darren was ready to give both. The ancient stone circle pulsed gently beneath Darren's trembling hands. The runes shone like embers, casting an eerie light on Eli's translucent face. The forest around them held its breath, the usual whispers ceasing as if awaiting a final reckoning. I'm sorry, Eli, Darren whispered, for leaving you alone, for forgetting. But I'm here now. I'll make it right. The apparition's eyes shimmered, a mix of sorrow and something almost like hope. Remember me, Eli said softly, not just as the lost, but as the brother who never gave up. Darren closed his eyes, feeling the weight of years pressing down on his chest. Guilt, regret, love all intertwined. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small locket he had kept hidden since Eli's passing. Inside was a photo of the two of them, smiling on a summer day long ago. He placed the locket in the center of the stone circle. The runes flared brighter, sending waves of warmth through the cold night air. The forest seemed to breathe again, leaves rustling softly as if whispering a blessing. Eli's figure began to dissolve into the moonlight, a gentle smile on his face. Thank you, Darren. As the last shimmer faded, the oppressive silence lifted. The woods no longer felt hostile. They felt peaceful, alive. Lucas and the rescue team arrived moments later, calling out for Darren. He stood slowly, the weight on his soul lighter than it had been in years. Walking back toward the ranger cabin, Darren glanced once more at the stone circle, now just weathered stones under the starlit sky. He knew he had finally come home.